I really do hope that in doing these fantasy football videos that I am helping some of you make some tough decisions in terms of your lineup. Hopefully I'm helping some of you in terms of your overall strategy when it comes to fantasy football. Keep in mind that we've still got a long ways to go in the fantasy football season, so if you have a rough week or you've gotten off to a rough start, don't give up, don't panic. It might be time to make some changes and do some things differently, but your season is far from over, and if you've started off really well, that doesn't mean you've won your fantasy football championship. You have to keep working, and you have to keep paying attention and doing the things necessary to make yourself a real fantasy championship contender come the end of the season. So, like I said, I hope I've helped some of you. If I have, I would like to actually hear some of those stories of lineup decisions that you made because of people that I told you to play that ended up helping you win. I'd like to hear them, so if you've got any of those, let me know in the comment section down below. But it's time for my Week 6 Fantasy Football Sit Start. Like always, we'll start off with the quarterback position, starting off with those quarterbacks you should consider sitting in week number 6. Colin Kaepernick of the San Francisco 49ers taking on the Arizona Cardinals. The Cardinals are a good defensive unit. The 49ers offense and Kaepernick in general have not been all that impressive to me throughout the whole course of the 2013 season. There are probably better options than starting Kaepernick in week number 6. Terrell Pryor, who has been somewhat impressive to me for the Oakland Raiders. He's taken on the Kansas City Chiefs at Arrowhead, and the Chiefs may be the best defensive unit not named the Seattle Seahawks in all of the National Football League. As a result, it's probably going to be a very tough day for Terrell Pryor and that Raiders offense. Matthew Stafford of the Detroit Lions taking on the Cleveland Browns. You know, Stafford's a guy that if Megatron's healthy could put up some big numbers, but if Megatron isn't, as you saw last week, the Detroit Lions offense struggled and scuffled, and Stafford doesn't really have a whole lot of options. And when you take into account they're facing a very good Cleveland Browns defense, it might be a rough week for Stafford and the Lions offensively. Quarterbacks you should consider starting: Matt Schaub, of all people, the Houston Texans taking on the St. Louis Rams. You might say, why Matt Schaub? Well, let's be realistic. The Rams really haven't stopped much of anyone at all this year. If there's ever a chance for Schaub to have a big rebound bounce-back game, this would be the game right here. Robert Griffin III of the Redskins taking on the Dallas Cowboys. You know, as much as I talked about the Broncos defense getting shredded well, obviously the Cowboys defense got shredded as well by Peyton Manning and that high-powered Broncos offense. And RG3 has put up some nice fantasy numbers this year in garbage time, and there could potentially be the opportunity to put up some big numbers against the Cowboys defense that has been far from stellar. Geno Smith of the New York Jets taking on the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Steelers defensively have been pretty bad so far, even though they are coming off of a bye week. You have to be impressed with Geno and his 199-yard, 3-touchdown performance on Monday night against a bad defensive unit, yes, in the Falcons, but still on a primetime stage, he completed 80% of his passes and no turnovers. Geno might be starting to slowly turn a quarter and improve, and if you're in a bye week pinch or if you've got an unfavorable matchup like somebody like Kaepernick or Pryor in your starting lineup, maybe looking at somebody like Geno Smith, who most likely is available on your waiver wire, might be the way to go for you in week number 6. Running backs to sit: Eddie Lacy of the Packers taking on the Baltimore Ravens. Lacy looked impressive coming off of his injury in the bye week last week against Detroit, but Baltimore did a great job of containing the Dolphins' running attack and basically making the Dolphins a one-dimensional team this past Sunday. Lacy could struggle a little bit. Maurice Jones-Drew of the Jacksonville Jaguars playing at Denver against the Broncos in what they call the Spread Bowl. Mojo just isn't a good fantasy play at all this year, but taking into account that the Jags could get behind very big, very early, they might not run the ball a lot. Bench Mojo. Take your chances with somebody else. Chris Johnson of the Tennessee Titans taking on the Seattle Seahawks. He scored 1 touchdown this year. That was kind of on a flukish screen pass last week against Kansas City. He doesn't get any goal line carries anymore. Those have been vultured out to Jackie Battle, and they might soon go to Sean Green as well. So Johnson's not getting the big-time performances that you've been accustomed to in years past out of him. And a tough matchup against Seattle, outpassed. DeAngelo Williams of the Carolina Panthers taking on the Minnesota Vikings. He gets carries, and he gets some yardage, but his goal line carries, he gets lost to Mike Tolbert or Cam Newton. As a result, his fantasy upside is very limited. There's probably better options for you. Running backs to start: Knowshon Moreno of the Denver Broncos taking on the Jacksonville Jaguars. You look at Moreno. This is a game where the Broncos could probably run the ball all the time and still win by 20 or 30 points. As a result, I would expect Moreno to have a good day, and maybe even his backup Ronnie Hillman might have a nice day as well. Zach Stacy of the St. Louis Rams taking on the Houston Texans. Now, you might say the Houston Texans, yeah, they're a good defensive club, and they are. But I did like what I saw out of Stacy last week. I don't think he's going to necessarily tear it up, but if you're in a bye week pinch or if you have running backs that are hurt right now, Stacy's probably available on your waiver wire. He's probably worth the pickup in a spot start here in week 6, maybe in a flex position. Le'Veon Bell of the Pittsburgh Steelers taking on the New York Jets. Le'Veon Bell looked all right in week 4 in his NFL debut. He's had another 2 weeks to rest before his next game. Got a bye week to get ready for the Jets. He had 57 yards and 2 touchdowns in his NFL debut. You could possibly see about the same out of him week 6. Andre Ellington of the Arizona Cardinals taking on the San Francisco 49ers. At some point in time, the Cardinals are going to realize that Andre Ellington gives them a better chance to win offensively than Rashard Mendenhall does. Mendenhall didn't have a terrible game last week, and he did have a touchdown, but Ellington is the better all-around performer, both as a runner and as a pass receiver. And if you're in a PPR league and you've got a running back on a bye, Ellington could come in there and give you double-digit points in a pitch that you wouldn't have normally expected. Danny Woodhead of the San Diego Chargers taking on the Indianapolis Colts in the Monday night game. He caught 2 touchdown passes last week. When you look at Woodhead, you sit there and you say that he's not going to get a ton of carries, but he is going to get some looks, I would think, this week, especially if Ryan Matthews doesn't play. Even if Matthews does play, I think Woodhead's going to get some carries, and he'll definitely be able to catch the ball out of the backfield. As a result, he might be, again, another good flex position play for you in a bye week pinch. Looking at wide receivers you should sit. Anquan Boldin of the 49ers taking on the Cardinals. Bottom line is I like Patrick Peterson over Anquan Boldin. The 49ers offense hasn't been very good to me so far this year, and it's a bad matchup, so sit Boldin. Robert Woods of the Buffalo Bills taking on the Bengals. Until I see something out of Thaddeus Lewis, I'm going to recommend you sit any and all Buffalo Bills wide receivers because they could have a tough time. Tavon Austin of the St. Louis Rams taking on the Houston Texans. If he couldn't really do anything against the Jacksonville Jaguars, why would you bother playing him against the Texans, whose defense is much better? Marcus Colston of the Saints taking on the Patriots. Colston has been okay, but he was pretty much non-existent last week against Chicago. And with Jimmy Graham there, and you've got young receivers like Kenny Stills and Nick Toon being worked into the rotation, I wouldn't expect a whole lot of opportunities for Colston this week. Nate Washington of the Tennessee Titans taking on the Seattle Seahawks. Now if they get run out of the building early by the Seahawks, maybe there's a chance for the Titans to put up some garbage fantasy points. But Washington was barely targeted last week, barely did anything, and until I see otherwise out of him with Fitzpatrick at quarterback, it might be wise to just kind of store him on your bench for the time being. One wide receivers to start. Austin Pettis of the St. Louis Rams taking on the Houston Texans. For all the trash people want to talk about Austin Pettis in terms of fantasy football circles, the bottom line is he seems to make some big catches for him and score some touchdowns. Again, if you're in a bye week pinch, he's probably available on your waiver wire, in part because people click on the little box that tells them about the guy and his fantasy prospects, and they say it's not very good. Now, if he gives you 60 yards and a touchdown and you're in a bye week pinch, that's more than you can ask for. Justin Blackmon of the Jacksonville Jaguars taking on the Denver Broncos. If Chad Henne is going to start, which I believe he is, that bodes much better for Justin Blackmon, especially considering that there's probably going to be a lot of garbage time opportunities going against the Denver Broncos. Blackmon could actually have a very nice day. Kendall Wright of the Tennessee Titans taking on the Seattle Seahawks. With Nate Washington on the outside, Kendall Wright might be able to line up in the slot and have a nice day getting a lot of check down passes from Ryan Fitzpatrick. Terrence Williams of the Dallas Cowboys taking on the Washington Redskins. Even if Miles Austin is back, I don't know how effective he'll be. But let's say he's not. Terrence Williams showed last week his big play potential opposite Dez Bryant on the outside in the Cowboys passing game. Williams going against a very good matchup, a very weak Redskins secondary, even if he's the number 3 receiver, could have still a very nice day of 80 or 90 yards receiving and maybe a touchdown. Vincent Brown of the San Diego Chargers, taking on the Indianapolis Colts in the Monday night game. When you look at Vincent Brown right now, people maybe overdrafted him a little bit this year, and then after a few weeks he really didn't do anything, so they cut him. And now he's starting to get targeted more in the passing game for Phillip Rivers. I think they're starting to build a little bit of a chemistry. So again, if you're in a pinch and he's on your waiver wire, go out and get Vincent Brown and plug him into your starting lineup as a flex position player this week. You might be pleased. And then finally, we get to the tight end position. Those you should sit. Let's look at Jermaine Gresham of the Cincinnati Bengals taking on the Buffalo Bills. The Bills have done a very good job against opposing tight ends this year. See what they did to Jordan Cameron last week of the Browns in that Thursday night game. And, Gresham's losing opportunities to Tyler Eifert. Sit him. Jared Cook, St. Louis Rams taking on the Houston Texans. After his big monster week 1, Cook hasn't really done a damn thing. Sit him, period. Colby Fleener, he's very frustrating. Indianapolis Colts taking on the San Diego Chargers. You look at Fleener and you're like, one week he does well, the next week he's absolutely non-existent. And you're kind of going to have to live with that with Fleener a little bit because you look at him, he's nothing more really at this point than at least, at the very best, the number 3 option in that Colts passing attack behind Reggie Wayne and T.Y. Hilton. Tight ends to start. Garrett Graham of the Houston Texans against the St. Louis Rams to me is a must-start. He was already having a nice season as the number 2 tight end. Now Owen Daniels is out for at least 4 to 6 weeks for Houston. You know Matt Schaub loves to target his tight ends. He loves to target them in particular in the red zone. And Garrett Graham's now going to be the primary tight end in that Matt Schaub-led offense? Sign me up for that. Garrett Graham is a good start this week and going forward for the next several weeks. Jeff Cumberland of the New York Jets taking on the Pittsburgh Steelers. You know, I look at Cumberland and he seems to be developing a nice chemistry and rapport with Geno Smith, and he's probably going to continue to get featured more at the tight end position than Kellen Winslow is. As a result, Cumberland's probably on your waiver wire. Maybe you have a tight end on a bye this week. Pick him up. Plug him into your lineup. Rob Gronkowski. Looks like he's finally going to come back and play and be ready to go in Week 6 here, taking on the Saints. Gronkowski is a must-start. Hopefully, if you drafted him or you found somebody stupid enough to cut him and you got him on the waiver wire, or you found somebody stupid enough to trade him and you got him at a low price, you know, now that vision and that fantasy football intellect, if you will start to pay off for you starting here, I believe, in week number 6, because you got to believe, even if he's not truly 100 full %, you got to believe Tom Brady's going to target him early, he's going to target him often, and again, in particular, he's going to target him in the red zone. So there's my fantasy football start for week number 6. Again, if you have lineup questions or fantasy trade questions or waiver wire questions, feel free to post them down in the comment section below and share with me your fantasy football stories where I've maybe helped you in a week or cost you in a week or helped you with a trade or whatever. You share those in the description box down below. I'd like to see them.